White background product photos have become the status quo online, and for good reason. They are consistent, giving your website a clean, organized look, and they make it easy for shoppers to see your product's true colors. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to create a white background in Photoshop in just a few easy steps. Step 1. Select your product. We'll be using this image for this tutorial. You'll note the image already has a solid color background. The method we're about to use will allow you to make a white background on any product photo in Photoshop, regardless of the original background. To get started, choose the Magic Wand tool from the toolbar at the left side of the screen. Once you've selected this tool, you'll note you have specific choices in the option bar at the top of the screen. Click on the button called Select and Mask. Once you're in the Select and Mask window, choose Select Subject. Photoshop will create a selection of your product within the image. All areas that are not part of the selection will have a dark red overlay, but it may not be a perfect selection. You can zoom in and use the tools on the left and upper sides of the window to refine the selection more. You can also adjust the size of the brush you use to control the selection, and whether you're subtracting or adding pixels to the selection using the brush tools at the top of the window. Once you're satisfied with your selection, click OK. If you're working on a Mac laptop, the OK button may be highlighted in the touch bar on your keyboard. You'll see your image with the marching ants selection border around the product. Step 2. Create a mask. Because we want our process to be non-destructive, we want to duplicate our background layer before we go any further. If you're working with an image that has multiple layers, the layer holding your product image may be labeled as something other than background. With your selection still selected, make sure the background layer is selected in your Layers panel and click on the 4 little lines in the upper right-hand corner of the panel. Then choose Duplicate Layer. You'll see a dialog box prompting you to name the new layer. Call it something that makes sense to you, such as Product, then click OK. Back in your Layers panel, click on the new layer you just created. With your selection still selected, click on the icon at the bottom of the panel that looks like a rectangle with a circle inside of it. In your Product layer, you should now see a mask of your selection next to the layer thumbnail. Still in your Layers panel, select your original background layer once more. Then create a new fill layer by choosing Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color from the drop-down menu at the top of the application window. In the dialog box that appears, move the cursor to the upper left side of the color field to select a pure white. Click OK. Step 3. Add shadows and highlights. Your product image should now be on a white background. We can take this a step further to make your image look more realistic, like it was actually shot against a white backdrop. Let's first add a subtle shadow to our product. Select your product layer in your Layers panel. Then choose Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow from the drop-down menu at the top of the application window. In the Drop Shadow dialog box, set the angle of the drop shadow to work with the angle of highlights and shadows in your image. Use the distance and spread sliders to pull the shadow away from the object so it only appears on one side. Don't worry about increasing the size slider. We'll blur the shadow manually next. Click OK. Next, we need to separate the drop shadow from its layer. Go to Layer, Layer Styles, Create Layer. You may get a dialog box warning you that you're separating out the layer style. Acknowledge that yes, this is what you want to do. After you've created a separate layer, you should see your product layer's drop shadow as its own layer in the Layers panel. Select the drop shadow layer. Go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur from the drop-down menu at the top of the application window. In the Gaussian Blur dialog box, pull the blur slider to the right until you are satisfied with the softness of the shadow, and click OK. Next, choose the Eraser tool from the toolbar and adjust it to a large, soft brush. With the drop shadow layer still selected, carefully erase portions of the shadow. You will need to use your judgment here to determine which parts of the shadow need to be removed. Also, you may choose to create a layer mask within the drop shadow layer in order to perform these changes so you can paint back any areas you accidentally erase. Reduce the opacity of the drop shadow layer so the shadow blends into the background. Finally, let's add some highlights to the image to make it look as if the light from the white background is reflecting onto the product itself. Select the product layer in the Layers panel. Then create a new layer by choosing Layer, New Layer. In the New Layer dialog box, set the blending mode to Overlay and check the box next to Fill with Overlay Neutral Color, 50% gray. Click OK. Select the new overlay layer in the Layers panel. Then, in your toolbar, select the Dodge tool. It may be hiding beneath the Burn tool. In the Options bar at the top of the window, set your Dodge tool settings to a large soft brush, your range to midtones, and your exposure to 20% or higher. In your overlay layer, paint highlights onto your image using the Dodge tool according to how you think the light would be hitting your product image. As with the shadows, you'll need to use your artistic judgment on how best to do this. Once you're satisfied with the results, hit save and bask in the glory of your amazing work. Head over to our channel for more Photoshop tutorials, and don't forget to like and subscribe.